The big question is growing your own food really worth all the effort? Hang out with me in the garden as we explore the true benefits, the challenges, and whether gardening is a fruitful endeavor. I'm also going to give you a full tour of my garden to show you what's thriving, what's struggling, and share some of the highs and lows of growing my own food. I've been involved in gardening in some way, shape, or form for my whole life, and my first garden in my first very own space was in Michigan, and I grew everything on my deck in containers. I grew lettuce, I grew tomatoes and peppers and herbs, and that was so satisfying because it was my first real experience with canning my own very own produce that I grew with my own hands, and I made the most amazing jalapeno pepper jelly. Fast forward 11 years, and I had moved down to South Carolina, really excited about the longer growing season and excited about all of the possibilities with growing in a completely new climate and growing zone. So I set up my first garden in South Carolina to be the perfect size for me to manage on my own. I added a few chickens and I got started with bees, and I started growing a pretty good amount of my own food. So I lived there for 5 years, and then I met somebody and got married and eventually moved into the location that I'm living in right now. And we had similar goals and dreams, and what we did was we greatly scaled up the garden that I had at my other house and scaled up to 28 raised beds. After a couple of years, that partnership dissolved, and you can put two and two together, but now I'm here as a single mom, and for the past few years, I've been trying to hang on to all of these dreams and goals on my own. I have not been able to maintain all of this the way that I really wanted to on my own with everything going on, and now the house is up for sale and there are lots of house showings going on, so you can only imagine being in the middle of canning something and having an unexpected house showing where you have to be out of the house for an hour at least. It's been really hard for the past couple of years watching all of these goals and dreams for this really large garden space slipping through my fingers, and I've been going back and forth between fight or flight mode and being completely heartbroken. For the sake of selling the house, I've decided to basically just keep this large garden space presentable by cutting the grass around it and trimming around the raised beds and just keeping it nice and tidy and presentable. In the meantime, in order to maintain stability for my kids, since they love being out here with me, they've been out here in the garden with me ever since they were born. They absolutely love helping in the garden. They've learned so much from the garden and they love eating the delicious food. I've been rebuilding the wooden beds here that are literally falling apart with metal raised beds that are really easy for me to put together by myself, and the kids helped put some of these together. This space right here behind me, which I'm going to show you in the garden tour in just a couple minutes, is the perfect manageable size for my children and I, and we are growing a lot of our favorite fresh food right here in this space. Not all of the fresh food that we're used to growing in this humongous garden, but our favorites are growing here right now, and that's what counts for right now. And you better bet I am going to take these metal beds, lift them right up, and move them to my new location, wherever that may be. I've had the honor of speaking at some local events, and I've been really active on my Instagram page almost every day, just putting my garden journal out there. I've done that for the past couple of years. One of the questions that I hear the most is this really worth the effort? The first and possibly most obvious thing that a lot of people think about when growing their own food is the monetary aspect of it. We all know about the prices of food in grocery stores right now, and if you prefer to eat organic food, those prices are even higher. Let's consider for a minute the price of a package of seeds. This package of seeds is just from our local hardware store, and it was $4.29. This is corn. I planted a 4x8 bed of corn. That's usually how I grow my corn. Usually I have 6 4x8 raised beds of corn every year, but I've pared down to 2 in this smaller space back here. I normally get about 90 ears of corn per 4x8 raised bed. You know that 90 ears of corn from $4.29 is going to be a lot cheaper than buying that corn at the store, and that's even if you can find that certain variety. Then of course you have to factor in the cost of your raised beds. Now, if you're growing in raised beds here in South Carolina, and I know this is in a lot of different locations, the soil is not ideal for growing in right away. It takes a really long time to amend the soil so that it's healthy and fertile to get maximum harvests from that space. So I've chosen to grow in raised beds. Of course, you have to figure in the cost of the raised beds. You can make raised beds out of all kinds of different materials, from free if you can source the material to, $250 for a metal bed setup that is going to last for years and years. Even still, with that more expensive option, spending $250 for a raised bed that you fill with premium soil, that raised bed is quickly going to pay for itself with the harvests that you're going to get out of that space compared to the price of groceries at the store. Even if you top your raised beds off every time you plant something with compost, which I highly recommend, even if you're purchasing the compost, it is quickly going to pay for itself. And even factoring in the cost of watering your garden, if you're purchasing hoses and soaker hoses for your irrigation system, you can start really basic on up to purchasing timers for your soaker hoses. There are so many ways to save water in the garden. Some people can even water their garden solely with rain barrels. But even if you're paying for water to water your garden, it's quickly going to pay for itself. Now let's talk about the emotional benefits of gardening, which might be less obvious if you've been doing it for less time or if you've never done it before. The satisfaction of growing your own food and then eating that delicious food can't be put into words. It's absolutely amazing. Coming into the garden, whether you've got a large garden space or just a couple of pots on your porch or even a couple of pots of herbs inside your house, it provides an escape from the everyday chaos of life, and it also provides a sense of calm and peace as you're nurturing plants. My garden, especially during the past decade, has gotten me through a lot of difficult times, and just coming out here to gather my thoughts gives me a sense of peace and stability. And I'm really holding on to that right now as I'm providing stability for my kids and myself going through a transition period. Even if you think you can't grow anything, you think, oh, I have a black thumb, I kill everything, I can't grow anything, I promise you, if you put forth the effort and learn as much as you can and just get out there and ignore that inner voice telling you that you can't do it and just do it, I promise you, you will be able to grow something and feel that satisfaction. And then when you do figure out how to grow it and you're enjoying your harvests, you will find, I promise, that nothing tastes more delicious than the food that you grow with your own hands. Now let's talk about the physical benefits of gardening. Obviously, the food is really healthy for you. You can grow all the fruits and veggies you want to attempt to grow in your garden, and you know exactly where that produce is coming from. There are no hidden chemicals. You don't have to wonder how it was grown. You're growing it with your own hands, you're harvesting it with your own hands, and you're preparing it with your own hands. Gardening is good for your body because no matter how much physical effort you're putting forth, the emotional benefits, the sense of calm and stability and satisfaction is just good for you emotionally. And when you're feeling better emotionally, that just has a lot to do with how good you feel physically. My biggest piece of advice for you after growing my own food in different ways and scales over the past couple of decades is not biting off more than you can chew with the whole entire process. The benefits could be taken over quickly by overwhelm and stress, and it would be a shame to give up something that could be potentially so good in your life because of burnout. Sometimes there are things we cannot control, like certain things that are going on with our lives, or more simple things like weather and pests. But you can reshape your gardening goals and overcome those, and every experience when you are trying to grow your own food is a learning experience, literally every day. No matter how many years or decades you've been gardening or growing your own food, every single day is a learning experience. There's always something to learn, and that's the absolute beauty of gardening. No matter what age you are, you'll be learning something new about the science of plants and soil and the ecosystem surrounding your garden. You'll be learning things every day about your microclimate and how it's evolving, either quickly or slowly. You'll be keeping a gardening journal maybe and noticing different trends. Perhaps the biggest and most important things I've learned throughout the years so far are things that I've learned about myself and how I've just become stronger and more resilient and more hopeful and more confident, and just to get through the more difficult stuff and to be a stronger person and to be a better mom. See, blood, sweat, and tears. If you're growing your own food and growing your own garden, you're going to experience that. And it's such an amazing thing. Not having enough space or the climate to grow your own food might be a challenge, but that's also something that can be overcome. You can grow herbs in a sunny windowsill or under little grow lights inside. Have you seen the price of fresh herbs at the grocery store lately? So even just growing a couple of pots of fresh herbs in your windowsill is a huge accomplishment. Gardening presents challenges that 9 times out of 10 can be overcome. Let's do this tour here. Entering the garden from the far side, you can see the 28 raised beds and all the grass in between the beds that has to be mowed. And that's one thing in my next place. I'm going to cut way down on that, if not zero grass at all. So here is a big grow bag full of chives right here. And this bed taken over by weeds. This next bed taken over by weeds. We do have some pretty volunteer sunflowers, which I love because we didn't plant any new ones, but it's nice to have some. Some more volunteer sunflowers. We saved a lot of seeds last season, so sunflower seeds are good for a while. I also saved them in Mylar bags, so we're gonna have some for our next place for sure. This is where I grew sugar baby watermelons last year. Learned a lot about that. That was my first time growing watermelons in raised beds. Here we had corn, and now there are some volunteer rattlesnake beans growing up this trellis. And we've been eating off of these vines for quite some time now, but I'm also saving some right here, just gonna let them dry out so that we can have seeds. I save rattlesnake seeds every year. You can see how the beds are falling apart here. That happens starting on year 4 in my experience. And they need to have repairs starting then, or you lose a lot of soil. And then year 5 and 6, they pretty much completely fall apart. You can see that right here too. This bed right here is full of parsnips, and I planted these, a year and a half ago in the fall. And I planted too late, so they took on a lot of new growth in the spring, and then when I harvested them, they were way too tough to even eat. So I just kind of let this bed go though, so that they would self-seed, because saving parsnip seeds and replanting them is difficult, because parsnips, the seeds need to be new in order to germinate well. Like anything past a year, they're not going to germinate very well. So if they self-seed, it's kind of awesome because they just do their natural thing. But my oldest daughter, she loves to raise caterpillars, especially monarch caterpillars, to help with their population. She plants milkweed in our butterfly garden and raises the caterpillars and tags them and everything. So this right here is part of her passion. Black swallowtails are attracted to parsnip plants. They lay their eggs on them, and then the caterpillars eat the parsnip plants. And so she has been raising them from egg. She brings them inside and raises them so that there's more of a chance of them, being released into the wild as adults, because often birds will eat the caterpillars. You can see kind of how much these beds have gone to the wayside, and that has been heartbreaking and difficult for me to watch for the past couple of years, but it is what it is. And instead of focusing on my fight or flight mode like, oh my gosh, I'm letting all of this go and my dreams and goals are gone and all of that. I'm just trying to focus on my next steps. These are some purple peas right here that I absolutely loved, and I'm letting them dry out right here so that I can save the seeds for next year. These purple peas are beautiful. They have the same antioxidants as blueberries. I got them from row 7 seeds, and I'm definitely planting them in the spring, next spring, or even if fall if I'm settled by then, but we'll see. But these are beautiful, and I'm excited about saving the seeds because they're open pollinated and organic. This right here is a volunteer cucumber plant from the cucumbers that we were growing last year. They have literally taken off in the grass at the base of the trellis, and these are hybrid. I think they're called tasty green cucumbers, but they're hybrids and they're actually growing cucumbers, so we'll taste them and see. And then see my trellis, it's a cattle panel trellis. It goes up and around. And there's another volunteer cucumber plant on the other side. And this one's looking good, but again, it's a hybrid. So when it's hybrid, it's a cross between 2 different varieties. So when they grow the following year, you are not going to end up with the same variety you started with. But we'll see how they go. Right here too, I just kind of let volunteer tomato plants go. These are Skyway tomatoes, which are hybrid. They've been growing for a while and not much has happened with these, so my hopes are not too high with these. But that's why it's important to save heirloom varieties, or at least open pollinated varieties. That's the bed that I just harvested garlic from. The other bed that I harvested garlic from. I wanted to plant melons in these beds after really amending heavily with compost, but I'm not sure if I'm going to because it has gotten kind of late in the season and I'm not sure if we're still going to be here within 100 days. So these are my onion plants. They are looking good. I started pulling weeds last night and I have to pull the rest of these weeds and get some mulch in here. But other than that, they are looking good, I think. This is the mulch I use. It's pine straw. It's easy to get because we have woods behind us that I can source it from. And also local businesses sell it. This is my favorite Bell Star broccoli. It had bolted and reseeded and now it's bolting again, but I'm not going to save the seeds because they're hybrid. But I would love to plant these for fall, but I don't think I'm going to be settled in my new place by then, so it's going to have to be a spring planting, I think. More beds that are out of control. Here's some hairy vetch that had self-seeded, and that's actually one of the cover crops that I like using. So if you let cover crops go to seed, then they will self-seed and then they might become an issue, but hairy vetch is pretty easy to pull out or mow down if you want to work it into the soil. We had parsnips in this bed over here that self-seeded, and then birds and wind or what have you have spread them into this bed, this bed, this bed, and then this far bed over here too. So that's a lot of beds full of self-seeded parsnips, but still pretty cool because it's a good natural environment for black swallowtail caterpillars. Parsnips actually get huge when they bolt, and pollinators love the flowers. Coming over here into the space in the back is the space that I'm investing most of my emotional and physical energy into right now. These are the 2 4x8 raised beds that I have planted with corn. We're waiting for this corn to germinate, and this corn is well on its way. I planted them a couple of weeks apart so that they don't tassel at the same time and cross-pollinate, but these are my little honey patch squash plants. These are my little mini sugar pumpkin plants. And then coming over here, I have Montesino tomato plant, which is an indeterminate plant in this 10-gallon grow bag, and it's doing awesome. There's already some little baby tomatoes on this plant. And then in this 2x8 bed, on both ends, I have Midnight Roma tomato plants. My first time growing them, and I'm really excited to try them out. And I thought I saw some little baby tomatoes on this plant. So they're in there somewhere. And these are little mini bell pepper plants right here. There are 2 of them. And then this is my purple jalapeno plant. I love those. I usually grow the early jalapeno variety, which I love too, so I usually grow them both at the same time. The purple ones I started growing last year, and I was so impressed that I'm growing them again this year, and I'd love to grow them every year, but this is the only variety I'm growing of jalapenos this year, given the transition situation. But when I get settled, I'll grow the purple jalapenos and the early jalapenos both again. This is my square foot 4x8 garden bed. And I have the rattlesnake beans that my daughter rescued from the early spring garden, and she grew them on the windowsill until they were safe to plant out after the frost danger went away. And we've been eating off of these plants. This is 3 plants right here, but I am definitely saving seeds from these plants because they kind of have a special meaning behind them. And then I've got my Space Master cucumbers in the back, which have been absolutely taking off. I've been harvesting lots of great cucumbers from these, and I like these plants because they are more compact cucumber plants, if you can believe that. I have a couple of pepper plants in there that I need to move the cucumber plants away from and cage those. Then I have some lettuce that is starting to bolt. Some of it already has bolted, so the chickens are going to enjoy that, but we've been eating fresh lettuce for a while now. And these are my blank squares that I need to plant lettuce in. I'm going to do that this weekend. I plant heat-tolerant, bolt-resistant lettuce varieties, so I'm going to attempt to grow more of that this summer. And I have some Delfino cilantro plants in here that are doing well so far. These are a slower bolting plant. And this variety is more mellow and less intense than traditional cilantro, so I really like that. If you are not a fan of cilantro, this might be a variety to try out to see if you like. Although it still is cilantro, it has the cilantro flavor, it's just a bit more mellow. These are my sweet garlic plants. They'll be ready to harvest when they reach about a ½ inch in diameter. These are a cross between leeks and garlic, so I'm excited to try those for the first time. And on this side, I have some more of our favorite rattlesnake beans, and then I've got basil that's going crazy here, and some parsley that's going crazy here in my 10-gallon grow bags, and then I've got some chives over here too. This garden space right here is my life force right now, and I can't wait to pick up these beds and see how they move and get them set up at my new location. This is the strawberry patch right here. In one of my recent videos, we were harvesting Sequoia June-bearing strawberries from this patch right here, and it's pretty much done producing for the season, and it's going to be kind of existing right here and putting out runners. So getting closer to the time when I'm going to move, I'm going to be harvesting runners, but the new owners can tear this out and move some runners somewhere else and do what they wish. But it's been a beautiful strawberry patch for the past few years. I feel like we've just scratched the surface talking about the benefits and challenges of growing your own food. But yes, I definitely feel like growing your own food is a fruitful endeavor on many different levels. If you'd like, please leave a comment below with your opinion on this. As always, thank you for watching and for supporting my little channel, and I would love for you to continue joining me in my garden.